Intro music fades. Host, alright, picture this. You marry someone you love, maybe someone a bit older, and their grown kids just don't like you. They're cold, they keep you at arm's length, and maybe, just maybe, they've got this idea stuck in their heads that you're only around for the money. Now imagine the twist. You're actually the one keeping the whole ship afloat financially, and they have absolutely no clue. That's the powder keg we're dealing with today in a story titled, My Stepkids Think I'm a Gold Digger, but they have no clue he's broke. This one comes straight from Reddit, where a user asked, Am I the asshole for telling my husband's kids how broke he was when we met after they insinuated I was a gold digger? Oh boy, buckle up, because this situation gets messy fast. Let's dive into her story. Our narrator, let's call her Clara, is 38 years old. She's been married to her husband, Rob, who's 52, for 4 years now. They dated for 2 years before tying the knot. Now, Rob has a bit of history. His late wife passed away just a year before Clara and Rob even met. It's a sensitive situation, right? Losing a spouse, finding love again, it's complicated. And adding to that complexity are Rob's 2 adult children, Madison, who's 28, and Brett, who's 26. Right off the bat, Clara clarifies something important. She says, Note, I am not calling them my stepkids because they explicitly told me I am not their stepmom, just their dad's wife. Wow, okay. So the lines are drawn pretty clearly from the kids' side. Clara seems to take this in stride, adding, I didn't play a part in raising them, so I'm okay with that. She mentions that being a child of divorce herself, she kind of gets the difficulty of a parent moving on, so she tries not to push things. But still, she admits, it's always been tense between us. I've tried my best to be kind to them and have been generous when I can be, but they are very cold with me. So you've got this dynamic. Clara, trying to be nice, navigate the situation delicately. Rob, presumably happy in his new marriage but maybe caught in the middle. And Madison and Brett keeping a frosty distance, making it clear Clara is just dad's wife. It's a fragile piece just waiting for something to tip the scales. And that something arrives in the form of happy news, ironically. Madison, the daughter, recently got engaged. Clara says everyone was excited about it. Family gatherings happen, wedding planning starts buzzing in the air. And then comes the inevitable question, the wedding budget. Madison asks Rob what he and Clara can contribute. Rob tells her they can give $10,000. Now, $10,000 is a decent chunk of change for most people, right? A very generous gift. But Madison apparently has grander visions for her big day. Clara says she has bigger hopes for her wedding than this, so she was upset and kept asking for more. Madison isn't just disappointed, she's actively pushing for a bigger contribution. This is where the story takes a crucial turn, and we get the hidden context, the part Madison and Brett clearly don't understand. Clara explains why that $10,000 offer is actually a huge deal for Rob. She reveals Rob, however, is still working hard on building his savings back up. Before his late wife died, he basically wiped out his cash savings, had to cash out his 401k, and even took a small mortgage on his house to cover medical costs as well as life expenses since he had to cut back on working. Think about that. Medical bills can be absolutely devastating. His late wife's illness didn't just take an emotional toll, it took a massive financial one. He drained everything, retirement funds included, and even went into debt against his own home just to keep things afloat. And it didn't stop there. Clara adds, eventually he had to drop that job for a more flexible but lower-paying one. So not only did he burn through his savings and take on debt, but his earning potential also took a hit. He sacrificed his career trajectory for flexibility, likely needed during his wife's illness or its aftermath. Considering all this, Clara emphasizes, so this $10K is actually really generous from him. He's offering this money while still trying to claw his way back financially from a devastating period. You'd think the kids, being adults, might have some inkling of the financial strain their mother's illness and passing must have caused, right? Maybe notice the job change, the belt tightening. Apparently not, or if they did, they weren't connecting the dots to the present day. Okay, so the scene is set. Madison wants more money. Rob has offered what he genuinely feels he can afford, a sum that represents a significant effort given his recent history. The tension is palpable. Then Rob needs to step out for an errand, and Clara is left alone with Madison and Brett. You can probably feel where this is going. With Dad out of earshot, Madison turns her attention directly to Clara. Madison then asked me if I'm going to give any in addition to what her dad is giving. She's bypassing her dad's stated limit and going straight to the woman she barely acknowledges as family, asking her to cough up more cash. Clara tries to maintain a united front. She tells Madison, we're a marital unit and that's what we discussed together as a reasonable amount to contribute. Solid answer, right. Reinforces that she and Rob are a team, that the decision was made jointly. But Madison isn't having it, and this is where the gloves come off. Clara recounts Madison's cutting reply. She then said, I should have known, obviously you married an older man for what he had, not for what you could give. Oof, there it is, the accusation hanging in the air for years, finally spoken aloud. The implication is clear. Clara is a gold digger, only with Rob for his supposed wealth, unwilling to contribute her own share. Clara is stunned. I knew she didn't like me, but this is the most flat-out rude thing she ever said. After years of trying to be kind, of navigating the coldness, of respecting their boundaries, this is the thanks she gets. Accused of marrying their grieving father for money he apparently doesn't even have. And something inside Clara snaps. Years of biting her tongue, of absorbing the coldness, of knowing the real financial situation, it all boils over. She says, I kinda lost it. And who can blame her? She fires back, excuse me, who do you think has been paying the second mortgage your dad took out to pay his debts? Boom, the truth bomb drops. Not just a denial, but a direct hit revealing a piece of the financial puzzle Madison clearly had no idea about. That debt her father took on during her mother's illness. The one that contributed to his financial strain. Clara's been the one handling it. But she doesn't stop there. Clara lays it all out. Truth of the matter is I make more than her father by a large margin. I have no debt and have been paying 70% of the household bills the whole time we've been married. Let that sink in. The woman accused of being a gold digger is actually the primary breadwinner, carrying the bulk of the financial load debt-free herself, while supporting her husband as he recovers financially. And the kicker, that $10,000 wedding gift Madison is so upset about. Clara clarifies its origin. The $10K we're giving her is available because I've been able to subsidize her father's living expenses the last few years. Essentially, Clara's financial support is the reason Rob even has $10,000 to offer. Without her, that money likely wouldn't exist. Clara concludes her revelation forcefully. I made it clear that not only am I not a gold digger, I'm literally wealthier than my older husband. She flips the entire narrative on its head. The perceived gold digger is actually the benefactor. How does Madison react to having her assumptions shattered so completely? Does she apologize, show remorse, maybe some dawning understanding? Nope. Clara says she called me stuck up after this and stormed out. Stuck up. For revealing the truth after being wrongly and rudely accused. That reaction speaks volumes about Madison's perspective, doesn't it? It's easier to label Clara stuck up than to confront the reality that she was completely wrong and perhaps deeply unfair. But the drama isn't over. Madison doesn't just storm out, she goes straight to her dad. And she doesn't tell him what really happened. Instead, Clara says, then she called her dad later and said that I told her that I blamed her mother for being sick for her not having a better wedding budget. Wow, just wow. Not only did Madison twist the situation, but she twisted it into something incredibly cruel and manipulative, blaming the deceased mother's illness. That's a low blow, designed specifically to paint Clara in the worst possible light and deflect from her own entitled behavior and false accusation. Clara, of course, tells Rob her side of the story, what actually transpired. How does Rob react? Well, it's complicated. Clara says he was mad at her Madison, but also said I shouldn't have shared his financial details with his kids. And there's the rub. He's angry at his daughter, presumably for the lie and the gold digger accusation. But he's also upset with Clara, not for defending herself, but for revealing the truth about his financial situation. He was apparently more comfortable with his kids thinking his wife was a gold digger than with them knowing he wasn't as financially stable as they assumed. That's a choice. So Clara is left in this awkward, painful position. Attacked by her husband's daughter, lied about, and then partially blamed by her own husband for telling the truth to defend herself. No wonder she turned to Reddit asking, am I the asshole? Let's pause here. What do you think? Was Clara wrong to reveal the financial details? Or was she pushed too far and had every right to defend herself against such a nasty accusation, especially when the truth completely dismantled it? Well, the Reddit community had a lot to say about this, and overwhelmingly they sided with Clara. The verdict was a resounding not the asshole. People were quick to point out that Madison's accusation wasn't just rude. It was an attack, and Clara had the right to defend herself with the facts. As one commenter might put it, you don't get to throw grenades and then complain when someone throws one back, especially when theirs is loaded with truth. But the comments went much deeper than just assigning blame. They really dissected the behavior of everyone involved, especially Madison and Rob. Let's talk about Madison first. The word entitled came up again and again. Commenters were floored by her reaction to the $10 million offer. Here's her father, who they now know went through financial hell, offering a significant sum, and her response is basically, not enough, give me more. It screamed privilege and a complete lack of awareness or empathy for her father's situation. Some suggested she must have been spoiled growing up, leading to these unrealistic expectations. Then there's the hypocrisy. People pointed out the irony. Madison explicitly rejects Clara as a stepmother. You're just dad's wife, but has absolutely no problem demanding money from her. You can't have it both ways. If Clara isn't family enough to be called stepmom, why is she family enough to be expected to bankroll your wedding beyond what your own father can offer? And the lie, oh, the lie. Commenters were appalled that Madison would twist Clara's words into blaming her deceased mother's illness. It was seen as incredibly manipulative, selfish, and a desperate attempt to make Clara the villain and avoid any accountability for her own behavior. It showed a shocking lack of character. Her focus was entirely on her wedding budget, with zero apparent consideration for the sacrifices her father made, the financial burden of her mother's medical care, or the support Clara had been providing. Now let's turn to Rob, the husband. While people were mad at Madison, they didn't let Rob off the hook either. A major point of discussion was his reaction. Why was he mad at Clara for revealing his financial situation? Many commenters felt his priorities were way out of line. As some put it, he seemed more concerned about his kids knowing he wasn't wealthy than he was about them falsely accusing his wife of being a gold digger. He essentially allowed his kids to maintain this negative, untrue perception of Clara for years, possibly because admitting his own financial struggles was too damaging to his ego or the image he wanted to project. Several people suggested Rob might have been actively downplaying his financial problems to his children. Maybe he exaggerated his recovery or never fully disclosed the extent of the debt and savings depletion. This lack of transparency could have directly fueled the kids' belief that Dad was loaded and Clara must be after his money. If he'd been honest with them earlier about the impact of their mother's illness and his subsequent struggles, maybe the gold digger assumption would never have taken root. Some comments even floated the idea that Rob himself might be subtly taking advantage of Clara's higher income, enjoying the subsidized lifestyle while letting her take the heat from his kids. It's a harsher take, but his failure to defend Clara strongly against the gold digger narrative, coupled with his anger at the truth being revealed, definitely raised eyebrows. Why hadn't he shut down those assumptions before it reached this boiling point? Why wasn't his immediate reaction, "Madison, how dare you speak to my wife that way? And for the record, you have no idea what our financial situation is or how much Clara contributes." Instead, his anger was split, partially directed at the person who defended herself with the truth. The financial context itself was also a big focus. Commenters emphasized just how crippling medical debt can be and how understandable Rob's situation was. They highlighted that Clara's contribution wasn't just helpful. It was crucial. She paid off a mortgage. She covered the majority of bills. That $10,000 gift literally existed because of her financial stability. This wasn't just chipping in, this was significant support. And this led back to the kids' awareness. How could they not know things were tight? Their dad took a lower-paying, more flexible job. He had massive medical bills for their mom. He took out a second mortgage. Were they just completely oblivious? Or did they choose to ignore it because it didn't fit the narrative they preferred? Some found it genuinely odd that adult children wouldn't have a better grasp of their parents' reality, especially after such a major life event. There was also strong agreement that, as a married couple sharing finances and facing a direct accusation based on those finances, Clara absolutely had the right to disclose the relevant truth. It wasn't gossip. It was self-defense against a direct insult rooted in a false financial premise. Madison opened the door by making it about money. Clara walked through it with the facts. So given all this, what should happen next? The Reddit community had plenty of advice. First and foremost, the consensus was that Rob needs to step up. Big time. He needs to sit his children down, have a serious, honest conversation about the financial realities of the past few years, explain the sacrifices made, and explicitly state how much Clara contributes and supports him. He needs to unequivocally defend his wife and make it crystal clear that the gold digger accusations are not only false but deeply offensive and unacceptable. He needs to correct the narrative he potentially allowed to fester. No more hiding behind discomfort or ego. He needs to set firm boundaries with Madison and Brett about how they treat Clara. Respect is non-negotiable. Some commenters went further, suggesting Rob and Clara should actually withdraw the $10,000 wedding offer. Madison's entitlement, accusation, and subsequent lie were seen as so egregious that she didn't deserve the gift, especially since its availability was thanks to the very person she insulted. Why reward that behavior? It's a tough call, but you can see the logic. Actions have consequences. There was also advice for Clara directly. Prioritize her own mental health and well-being. She shouldn't keep putting herself in situations where Madison or Brett can disrespect or humiliate her. Maybe that means limiting contact or only interacting when Rob is present and prepared to intervene. She's tried being kind and generous. It hasn't worked. It might be time for polite distance and strong boundaries. An interesting point raised was about Rob's discomfort with his financial details being shared. If he's so bothered that Clara revealed she paid off his debt, taken out before she was even married to him, mind you, then perhaps he should focus on repaying her. If he wants financial privacy, maybe he shouldn't be relying so heavily on her income to cover debts incurred before their marriage. It forces him to confront the reality of the support he's receiving. Ultimately, the core issue seems to be a lack of open communication and honesty, primarily from Rob towards his children, and a failure to establish a respectful dynamic from the start. He needed to manage his kids' expectations and behavior towards Clara long before it got to this point. So what are the big takeaways here? This story really highlights the intense difficulties that can arise in blended families, especially when adult children are involved who have pre-existing loyalties and perhaps unresolved grief or resentment. Assumptions can run rampant and cause incredible damage. Madison assumed Clara was a gold digger based on what? Age difference, her own desire for more money. She built a narrative without any facts. It also underscores the critical importance of partners supporting and defending each other. Rob's failure to shut down the gold digger narrative earlier and his mixed reaction after the confrontation put Clara in an impossible position. A united front is crucial, especially when facing external criticism or hostility from family members. His loyalty seemed divided, and that's a recipe for disaster in a marriage. The story is also a powerful reminder about financial realities versus appearances. The kids saw an older man and assumed wealth, completely missing the devastating impact of medical costs and the quiet sacrifices being made. And ironically, the person they targeted as benefiting from this supposed wealth was the one actually providing the financial stability. And finally, it speaks to the right to defend oneself. While revealing someone else's financial struggles is usually sensitive, when you're being directly and falsely accused based on those finances, the rules change. Clara absorbed the coldness for years, but the direct gold digger insult crossed a line. Using the truth to dismantle that accusation, especially when it completely reversed the narrative, felt justified to most observers. Where do they go from here? It's hard to say. Rob has a lot of work to do. He needs to have that tough conversation with Madison and Brett, own up to his own lack of transparency if that was a factor, and demand respect for his wife. If he can't or won't do that, the tension and resentment will likely continue to poison the family dynamic and potentially damage his marriage to Clara. Clara needs to decide what level of disrespect she's willing to tolerate and set boundaries accordingly, with Rob's full support. Madison needs a serious reality check about entitlement, respect, and honesty. Whether she's capable of that kind of self-reflection remains to be seen. It's a messy, complicated situation with no easy answers. A woman marries a widower, tries to be kind to his grieving kids, supports him financially behind the scenes, only to be accused of being a gold digger by kids who have no idea their dad was broke, and that she's the reason they're even getting a $10,000 wedding gift. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife. You just hope that somehow the truth can lead to some level of understanding or at least a cessation of hostilities. But based on Madison's initial reaction, that might be wishful thinking. What a story. Outro music begins.